And welcome back to the Hot Lap, where we will be asking, has F1 peaked? Is Verstappen dominance, is Red Bull dominance, well, mainly Max, ruining Formula One? I mean, check out, well, if you want a few quotes, a few headlines here, check this out. I mean, mentions fall by 70.7%. New followers down by 49.2%. Social reach down by 64.1%. Now, we've got terms like boring, disappointing, has increased its usage amongst social media conversations. I mean, what seemingly happened was, thank you to Drive to Survive, thank you to the absolute boom that's given. Also, that fantastic title fight in 2021. But then we had 2022. Started off well. Then we had 2023. This year, oh dear. Yeah, I'm a poet and I didn't know it. I mean, this is from motorsport.com. Now, analysis by BuzzRadar, we'll get into that in a bit, which is a social intelligence company of social media patterns for the last decade, has highlighted how the 2023 campaign has triggered a dramatic U-turn. In a case study published on yesterday, titled, Have We Reached Peak F1? Yeah, we kind of stole that one. So its analysis has suggested that the boom of 22, which was obviously boosted by that title fight, may well have been a high point. And now, it uses a combination of human analysis and AI data to look at Formula One social media over the past decade, which include an analysis of 70 million. Think about that, 70 million fan posts. It found that the championship had suffered its first decline of interest in a while. Now, it's not great. I mean, let's have a look at this. Let's have a look. I am just going to send you absolutely here mentions in 2021 3.19 million, in 2022 6.14 million, in 2023 1.83 million, and that's down obviously pre 2021. New followers 624.27 thousand k. 2022 nearly a million at 911.15k. And 2023, well, the lowest out of those, 489.37k. Social reach, 35.63 billion in 21, going up to 61.73 in 22, then down, but it's quite significant, 22.16 billion. Absolutely, it's just down, isn't it? So let's get into this Buzz Media review, shall we? This Buzz Media. This is the report here, powered by Buzz Media. It came out on Thursday. So it says, we're BuzzRadar, a leading social intelligence company. We take the sea of online data created by social media and use it to help organisations understand their audiences. It's going on about social data being the fuel. And the first question it said we thought we'd tackle is, have we reached peak F1? And as explained in the motorsport.com, it's using data, AI, human analysis, which is exploring an interesting phase, it says, in the sport's popularity. Yes, it is. And predict what will happen in the future. It says, in this report, we'll delve deeper and determine whether we've hit peak popularity and if it's now in decline, or if F1 is still gathering speed among new fans. Part 1, have we reached peak F1? So here we go. We got how we've analysed F1 audiences and trends, the numbers, methodology and process. 77.6 million online conversations around F1. 247,000 accounts have been analysed, and they look at F1 forums, keywords, hashtags, AI, human analysis, which looks at audience analysis, trend identification, pan point analysis, finding report and recommendations. That's obviously data-driven, top trends. But let's have a look. The rise of F1. Have we reached peak F1? So it says, before we can understand if we've reached peak F1, it's useful to provide an historical context. So in 2016, Formula One was in a state of stagnation. Eccleston had been at the helm of the F1 commercial rights for almost 40 years. Yep, anyone remember Bernie? And it had played a key role in turning the sport into a billion-dollar business. However, F1 has faced a dwindling and aging fan base due to outdated broadcasting practices and a neglect of the younger demographics. So, its audience is getting old and not new people are not replacing them, or potentially not. So with a limited social and digital engagement strategy, a lack of understanding its audience, it was losing fans to other sports. However, it says, following its sale to Liberty Media in 2017, F1 experienced a period of explosive audience growth with the fastest growing fan base among young people when compared to other sports. How did this happen? There are several factors. It says the implementation of a strong social and digital content strategy, runaway success of Netflix Drive to Survive, that can't be ignored, and a new generation of younger, exciting drivers. And it also says the timing of those COVID-19 lockdowns. But which of these factors really drove F1's explosive growth? It says, by analysing millions of online conversations across the last 10 years using AI and human expertise, we get an objective, data-driven understanding of which had the biggest impact. It says here, the growth of F1 illustrated by social conversations. It says a combination of strong building blocks and a good timing drove to increase in online F1 conversation from 2019 to the first half of 2022. Now, if you look at the chart at the bottom, it's got the 26th season, and it's got a big peak there as we're going along the timeline where Rosberg and Hamilton collide in Spain, and then Liberty Media takes over at the end of 2016. It's not much, but it peaks and trough really in between each season. 2017, it peaks a bit again when Lewis wins that fourth title, and at the beginning of 2018, both Haas cars lose their wheels, which peaks a bit, but significantly, and this is where we start to see the upturn, is 2019 Drive to Survive Season 1 launches, and it's first year for Norris, Russell and Albon. And then we've got Ferrari win their first home race since 2010. That was Leclerc at Monza. Then we had the lockdown and Drive to Survive Season 2 launches. 2020, we're in now, the lockdown season, the shortened season, but not, interesting tracks, let's say they went to. It was quite the season there. But Gasly wins in Monza. We've got a peak there, 2021 season. Ocon wins Alpine's first Grand Prix. Max and Lewis crash at Monza. And then Verstappen wins dramatic title fight. They're controversial. Abu Dhabi 2021. Then we've got a lull in, as you would in between the season, and it says Sainz defies team orders to win British Grand Prix. He doesn't really define team orders. And then Max wins world title after points confusion, but as you can see, it peaked in 2021. And when we read the text, it says, while Drive to Survive didn't create massive amounts of direct conversation, it turned new audiences onto the sport, teams and drivers. It says just as Season 2 launched, a combination of lockdown and a series of dramatic sporting events boosted conversation levels across social. This peaked in 2021, where the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, which remains the most talked about race and single day of social conversation for F1. It says collisions, close championships and shock wins pushed conversation into the mainstream, getting more talked about the sport and drawing in new fans. It says, while lapsed fans from traditional fan bases like the Tifosi rejoined the conversation, with Ferrari wins having an outsized effects. And it has here growth, F1 versus other sports. So you've got the NFL, Champions League, Premier League, MLB, NASCAR, IndyCar, WRC. I mean, as you can see here, in terms of motorsport, it is the biggest. And also, it's had quite a big gain since 2016, compared to some of the others. It said, we've looked at 10 major annual competitions across a range of different sports. F1 places first for motorsports and is fifth in the most discussed sporting league in the world, a position it's held from 2016 to 2022. The most current data they've obviously got access to, it says. But now, between 2016 and 2022, it grew its conversation levels by 80%, which is only bettered by the Indian Premier League, which had a 208% increase, and the Champions League at 112. So it says, remarkably, F1 managed this despite hosting the fewest events of the top five, with 22 conversation coming from just 22 race weekends, compared to 285 NFL matches, including the Super Bowl, which year on year is the most talked about sporting event in the world. So F1, I mean, I tell you what, it would be interesting how if they broke that down per race weekend, per event, because then F1 would be doing even better, wouldn't it, overall? when you look at it. It says F1 followers increasing year on year. The fastest growing social channels of any major motorsport. Just have a look at that lovely bar chart. Do you remember them at school? And it's we're getting now to the big 50 there. It says F1 social media followers across its channels have been increasing every year since that Liberty takeover. It went on to say the only year that growth slowed was 2018. The biggest growth was 2021, no surprise there, when they gained around 14 million new cross-channel followers. This makes them the fastest growing social channels of any major sport in that time period. Amazing. It shows you what it can do when we have some competition. Talking to you, Red Bull and Verstappen. So it says, are we past the peak? Have we reached peak F1? So the evidence that we've reached peak F1, and here we go. Is this going to be doom and gloom? Well, it says from the end of the 21 season to the start of the 22 season, F1 broke metrics across the board, both in terms of social, digital and television viewership. But the social data from the first half of 2023 season suggests that fan interest in F1 is on decline. It says the data comparison between 22 and 23 revealed significant drops, as we've seen with that quote, in the overall mentions of F1, along with dismal numbers in the growth of the new followers. The reach of F1 related content across various social platforms has also receded, in stark contrast to the steady progress observed before. But the declining numbers are only part of the story. The social data from 23 also offered insight into a fundamental shift in conversation about F1, a noticeable upswing in the use of negative adjectives associated with the sport. As we've seen, words like boring, annoying are now becoming high frequency, replacing erstwhile positive words like interesting and exciting. After training our AI models to follow patterns in online conversation over the past 10 years, we predict a steady decline in F1 interest online until the domination of Verstappen and Red Bull ends and competition closes up. Our predictive model estimates that F1 could lose as much as 50% of the new audience it gained by 2024 if the same driver continues to dominate the sport. Here's the data-driven insights that back our prediction. So have we reached peak F1? Well, the numbers, as we've seen here, we've already seen the quote from that a bit earlier at the beginning of the video, but it says they've been tracking F1 social channels and online conversations for a decade and analysing their growth in detail. It said unprecedented growth, as we know, in 21 and 22. From mid-22, we're now seeing a consistent pattern drop-off. And it goes on to say there's a noticeable drop-off in total mentions of F1, new followers for key accounts and reach between 22 and 23. Now, prior to 23, mentions of F1 have been growing steadily year upon year. Using AI pattern detection and predictive intelligence, our team can determine a strong degree of confidence that 22 was peak in F1 popularity for the foreseeable future, and we're now on a downward trajectory. And when we look at it, down mentioned by 70%, down 46.2% in terms of new followers, and social reach down again. The lowest out of these 3 years. So the star, if anyone want to know, is all data Jan to May of the relevant year. So how the tone of F1 fans is changing in 23. Tonal conversation, that's a big sentence, isn't it? Variation. So it says another key signal in social data that fan interest is peaked is the change in tone of the language used. Using machine learning based on tone detection, we looked at all the social posts in 22 and 23 to analyse how people talked. And it goes on about, we saw conversations that inferred an increase in boredom and annoyance, while positive conversations, as we mentioned, have dropped off. Based on the conversation analysis, the biggest contributor, as we know, enter Max Verstappen and Red Bull. Look, I'm not having a go at them. They have done both of them, best car driver combination, yes. They've done a really, really good job, too good a job when you look at Red Bull. Now, what's going to be interesting, though, is, as we know, the FIA are not doing anything. And if you remember, 2020, 2021, they did change the rules. It did affect Mercedes. It affected Aston Martin, or the pink Mercedes, so to speak, at Racing Point. But it did affect, and that's why it brought Mercedes closer to Red Bull from the beginning of the year. Because if you remember, going from 2014 to 2020, Red Bull did win races, but they didn't start off very well, and it was normally kind of going into around about the middle of the year and that second half of the year where they looked a lot more competitive. And, well, I think no one's competing with Max this time round, are they? But, yeah, it's not looking too great for Red Bull domination. I mean, when you actually look at Japan, the last race we've had, they absolutely so dominant, weren't they? No one got near them. McLaren's 19 seconds, but still, you had to wonder how much Max still had in the can. But it says how fans are voicing their frustration. So it says social conversation examples and their impact. It says by Kids Love F1 _ YT, 480 followers. I don't know, man. IDK F1 just doesn't feel the same anymore. I watched every race of Mercedes domination here religiously, but there's something about the season that isn't very compelling. Maybe I'm just talking nonsense, but it feels like there's nothing at stake. Paul has said, repeated dominance of one team is one of the most important things in making F1 a year of F1 boring or not. If there's a fight at the front, it's always good to watch. Absolutely it is. And Chukdalakau says, Verstappen is about to do me a service by causing me to stop watching F1 and freeing up my weekend mornings. It's got here, F1's Miami GPCs, it dropped by 24% a year on ABC. We've only had two years, but it says 1.96 million viewers tune in compared to 2.58 million. So that's well over, that's well over 500,000, six tenths, let's say. That's 500,000 more. I mean, yeah, that's 660, whatever. The maths. It's significant. It's really hard. Trying to do maths when I'm talking to you guys. I can't do two things at once. My other half can. I can't, but it says F1 continues to beat NASCAR in the 18 to 49 demographic. And Miami GP scores ABC's smallest Sunday afternoon audience over the past month. And it says this season's Miami Grand Prix saw a 24% drop in viewership compared to 2022's debut event, but it still saw the second highest live Formula One audience in the US. It went on to say an average of 1.96 million viewers tuned in to a Disney-owned commercial channel to watch, compared to, as we mentioned, 2.58. While this ranks second in terms of live viewing figures in the US, the most watched race in American history remains the tape-delayed 2002 Monaco Grand Prix, with 2.78 million viewers watching on a delay. 2002. Wow, I didn't. That David Coulthard won that, so there we go. David Coulthard, you are the most watched race winner in terms of TV in America. Well done. So, our prediction to have we reached peak F1. The conclusion, it says close competition means more fan engagement. I mean, that's pretty obvious. It said there's a clear pattern in F1, as there is in most sports. The closer closer competition, the more people that are excited to talk about F1. This large contingent of new fans of the sport are expecting the excitement levels to be consistent with 21 and are more likely to drop off when the competition is less intense. Okay, pretty obvious. And it said 2016 was the most talked about season until 21, despite all the contributory factors of the Liberty takeover, Drive to Survive, lockdown, because as we know, Rosberg and Hamilton were battling closely. The season was decided by only 5 points. Rosberg won, didn't he? And then retired. But there we go. Conversation stagnated between 2018 and 2020, while Hamilton dominated and grew significantly again, as we know, that 2021 season, the closest championship since 2016. It said both 2016 and 2021 seasons were decided at the last race. 2022 continued to ride the wave of competition at the end of 21, but now we're seeing the result of that one driver domination, and 2023 is now on course to continue this losing conversation. This pattern will continue, and as we see here, I mean, you can see the graph in F1 mentions from 2016, which was, to be fair, quite high really there, in terms of the driver winning margin, to now. Yeah, it does kind of suck, doesn't it? But even though in 2017, 2018 and 2019, to a certain extent, we had a really competitive Ferrari, didn't we? And it goes on to say Hamilton's most dominant season so far saw a 25% drop, so that would attribute that. 2021 season ends with 155 million mentions, the closest championship since 2016. So the data shows that if F1 continues to be dominated by one driver-in team, it will lose much of the newfound audience. But it's not all bad news. Here we go. Fan conversation is hugely more passionate than it was in the past. Some may say toxic when it comes to Verstappen, Red Bull, Mercedes and Hamilton, but it says understanding the tone behind online conversation is a great indicator of how passionate a fan base is. Traditionally, F1's fan base has been more interested in technical, factual aspects of the sport, generating mostly neutral conversation. However, the recent rise in popularity of the drivers and teams has resulted in a more opinionated conversation, 1% increase in negative conversation, and a 27% increase in positive stuff, showing that current fans are increasingly tenacious and passionate about their sport. So that's not too bad, is it? I mean, there we go. It's got June to March 2016 and then June to March 2023. So there's hope, isn't there? Now, preview of our other F1 reports during engagement, unveiling the secrets of F1 social data. How do new fans get into F1? This is really interesting. So they've analysed thousands of online conversations around people's relationship with F1 and how they got into F1. Now, the leading factor was family interest, getting them involved. Tell that to my kids. They don't care. They think the minute I put racing on, it's absolutely boring. And I'm sitting there on my own. To be fair, though, I do watch it with my mum and brother when I can, because my kids aren't interested at all. Unfortunately, I've tried so hard. Maybe if I can afford it, I'll bribe them to go to Silverstone. Anyway, it goes then YouTube recommendation, and the algorithm comes in second, and is more. That's interesting. It says the YouTube recommendation algorithm that comes in second is more effective than Drive to Survive. YouTube is frequently mentioned as having offered F1 clips, including team radio, race highlights, historical documentaries, which successfully hooked people on the sport. But most people's route into the sport is via a combination of factors. For example, a common narrative is having a family background in the sport, then several years of disinterest, followed by Drive to Survive or YouTube reigniting that. So that is quite interesting. I mean, Drive to Survive, family and friends are at 27%. Drive to Survive at 18, which is quite significant. Friends, proximity to the race. That's not too bad. Video games. Yeah, we got F1 2023 and loads of other racing films, other motorsport, Top Gear, car culture. The pandemic is still there. That's really quite interesting. But moving on, fans changing support around F1 teams. This is interesting. So a preview of part 3. How is F1 audience changing? So conversation for all teams has gotten a lot closer. It says the spread of the most talked about to least talked about in 2017 was 34%, while this was reduced to 22% in 2022, and a reduction of a comparative reduction of 35%. Okay, so there's been a major shake-up across the paddock. Ferrari fans no longer sing alone, making all the noise. They generated over a third of all team conversation in 2017. But in 2022, they sit second to Red Bull. At the other end of the spectrum, Haas's share of the conversation has gone up tenfold as fandom now extends all down the grid. Conversations continues to largely track with on-track performance. However, various teams' ups and downs of the grid fared better or worse, depending on various factors. These include championship performance, popularity of drivers, and strength of social content strategy. So it's interesting that we've got here Red Bull, the second Red Bull in terms of 2022. The most popular team talked about. I'm sure they're talked about. I don't know how much of it's going to be popular, maybe. But yeah, I completely get that. Before that, it was obviously in 2016 it was Ferrari, and obviously Mercedes is still up there. McLaren being the fourth. That's quite interesting, isn't it? And then it slowly declines like Haas, Alpine, Aston Martin, Williams. Unfortunately, to the bottom of AlphaTauri. It'll be interesting that AlphaTauri this year, because we've had Lawson and Daniel Ricciardo, which surely is going to, pique some of that interest. So, want to know more? Sign up. There we go. Buzz Radar September 2023. I mean, that was really interesting, wasn't it? I found that quite interesting. I hope some of you did. But Formula One has rebutted. It said F1 has directly refuted a recent report suggesting that the sport's popularity has taken a significant dive in the past 12 months. It said on Thursday, social media analysis company BuzzRadar published a 23-page report, which we've just seen, Have We Reached Peak F1? BuzzRadar explored the topic in a white paper analysis, which combines human eyes with artificial intelligence. We know about that. And according to the report, F1's going down. New followers dipped, etc. It said the reach of F1-related content across various social platforms has also receded, in stark contrast to the steady progress observed yearly before. But the declining numbers are only one part of the story. BuzzRadar's analysis of F1's social media accounts and impressions. It goes on, there's a noticeable drop, and there's a clear pattern. The data shows that if F1 continues to be dominated by one driver in the team, it will lose much of the newfound audience in the Liberty media. Approach for comment, F1 supply planetf.com with figures that completely refute, though. And this is interesting. Their figures show that the follower growth across official FOM channels is up by 757%, 8 times on what Buzz Radar reported. F1's figure is 3.7 million new followers, while Buzz Radar's is only 489,000. That's interesting. Now, in the second quarter of 2023, social channels have ranked second amongst all major sports leagues for follower growth rate, bested only by Spanish Football League. F1 also state that on their social media channels, active engagement such as likes, comments and shares are up by 4% when compared to 22, and like in 21 and 22 are set to surpass 1.5 billion. Fantastic for F1, that. So they have fought back, haven't they? But, and here's another interesting article, albeit it's from the beginning of August from gpblog.com. Number of viewers of F1 slightly reduced after the 2021 peak season, and it says it has become a tradition at the beginning of the season. Formula One announced how many viewers the class had the previous year. Each time this was done with a blaring press release. Indeed, time after time, it managed to report that TV viewers. But as we go into August 2022, there's silence from its London headquarters. Why has F1 not revealed yet how many TV viewers there were in 22 and in which regions they were to be found? It goes on to say a leading business F1 magazine knows why Ian Holmes, the TV guru within the Formula One group, has not gone public. There is, in fact, a decline in viewership, albeit a marginal one, and we need only dip into the annual figures to see that. Now, whereas it says in 2021, the year of the exciting title fight, once again it peaked. There were 1.55 billion. According to the annual report, there were 1.54 billion in 22. The annual press release always explained how the number of viewers were divided by region and age groups they fell into. Nothing is currently known about that. Okay, that's interesting. But I imagine there's going to be an even bigger decline this year, unfortunately. And is another one. F1 reveals drop in viewing figures, and this is looking, I think, at contrary to the ongoing claims that F1 is booming like never before. TV figures for 22 actually show a drop compared to the previous season. And this is from March 2023, I think. Is it March? Yeah, 25th of the 3rd. Indeed, its fourth quarter and year-end financial results issued on March the 1st. Liberty refers to the cumulative TV viewers of 1.54 billion, as we've just seen. Now, in the release, it lists various other metrics. Now, checking the same metric from the previous years, and lo and behold, the figure is down. Okay, only slightly down, 0.01 billion. That's 1.55 billion to 1.54. The crucial point is that interest in F1 did not skyrocket last year like it did in 2021, as Liberty would have us believe. While one can understand Liberty's reluctance to admit that viewer figures have declined, there remains the question of why. But, we all know why. It was, even with Drive to Survive, the F1 season is currently a bit boring. With obviously Max Verstappen absolutely dominant. He's absolutely dominating, isn't he? So I mean, I don't really know what more people there. I mean, there's Lewis and Max in Brazil, which was the best race. I think the best race of the year. As Singapore may well have been the most exciting race of this year. So it is Red Bull's fault, but it's not, because they've just done a really good job. So we can blame it on all the other teams not doing a really good job. As the report suggested, though, if the teams up their game and do a really good job next year, and we have, I think, even if it's not a title fight, if you go into a Formula One weekend not being 100% sure who is going to win, and even after practice qualifying in the race, there's still a chance that you do not know who's going to win. I think F1 will still trump to the 2022 and certainly this year, and we will see an increase when compared to this year. Indeed, if we now have amazing races like Singapore between now and the end of the year, I again think it will go up. The article is basically saying quite rightly that if the domination continues, this will happen. Now, the big question is going to be, as we know, the big wigs, Sky, for example, have just renewed their F1 license. They're carrying Formula One in the UK and I think many other countries. And that is a massive, that's loads and loads of money, isn't it? I don't know how much, but it is a lot of money. Let's Google it. How much, let's see, how much does Sky pay for F1? There you go. Okay, the Ultra HD coverage is available for Sky Q and Sky Glass customers. The total current deal is 1.18 billion. That's from 2019 to 2024. It's unclear how much that increased by the contract extension, but it's expected to be more than 200 million per season. So there we go. We're talking big money, aren't we? And if the audience figures go down and it's up for renewal, people like that, they're not going to pay as much money, are they? There's going to be less eyes on it. There's going to be less advertising on it, and that's where they're going to make pretty much all them, most of their money. And then Liberty Media are going to have a problem. So, will they change the rules? Will they change the rules? Will they handicap Red Bull? This is the thing. Do you agree with them handicapping Red Bull? They've done the best job, kind of like Mercedes did in the turbo era from 2014 to 2020, and then their Achilles heel was cut, wasn't it, there? And they were not as fast, but we had a really, really good and exciting championship, the most exciting championship for years between those two teams. For me, that's up there with 1997, Jacques Villeneuve versus Michael Schumacher, or 98, Mika Hakkinen versus Michael Schumacher. Absolutely fantastic stuff. But, so the purists could argue that's really, really unfair, but unfortunately, in F1, whether you like it or not, to a large extent, money talks. And there's Hamilton, and there's Max Verstappen on top of there, Lewis Hamilton at Monza. There we go, that example there. And here we go here. I think this would be Imola, where Verstappen, basically, Hamilton ran out of road, and I think damaged his front wing. And there's Max Verstappen winning in Japan, I think this year. But anyway, I'm not going to give a running commentary of all the images. This has been the hot lap. This has been the longest hot lap I think we've ever had. So I'm so sorry if you got bored with that report. I found it absolutely fascinating. I'll put the link in the description if you want to watch it. This has been the hot lap. We'll speak to you next time. Like, subscribe, etc. Thank you very much. See ya.